Welcome back. This is episode 134. In this episode, I'm going to cover 7 credit card rules to live by. And if you follow them, you'll be able to get the most from your credit cards. And in a perfect world, none of us would use credit cards. We'd only use cash or debit card to pay for things, and we wouldn't spend more than we can afford. And this is definitely an option. You don't have to use credit cards. I'm not a fan of debt. But, credit cards are probably a necessity for a lot of us, and there's a lot of good reasons to use them. And if you're using your credit cards responsibly, there's a lot of benefits that you can get from them. And at some point, as we go through different phases of life, we'll have to borrow money to buy things like a house, a car, or pay for college. And when you do that, you're going to want to have the best credit score that you can have. And how you use your credit cards has a major impact on your credit score. So if you follow these rules, it'll help you not only get the most from your credit cards, but also help you to improve your credit score. So rule number 1 is to pay off your credit regularly. And maybe you're already doing this, but you may not know that your debt payment represents 35% of your credit score. And it's one of the single most important things you can do to improve your credit score. Even if you're not paying your credit card off every month, that would be my preference for all listeners. But if you're at least making the minimum payment, that's going to help your credit score. And if you don't make the minimum payment, this can allow the credit card company to raise your interest rate and charge you a late fee. If you, for example, miss just one payment, it's estimated your credit score can drop by 100 points, and your APR, your annual percentage rate, that's the rate that you pay interest on, can go up 30%. So you don't want to be missing your credit card payments. And never fear, if you happen to miss your credit card payment, generally the best thing to do is to call up your credit card company, make the payment before calling them, or you can make it over the phone and then see if they can do anything for you. Maybe they can waive your late fee. They can even maybe not report it to the credit agency. Maybe you paid it quickly enough that it's not going to get reported, because you don't want that negative reporting to go on your credit card, from your credit card onto your credit report. But if it does, and then you get back up paying on time, and that history of late payments goes away, generally your credit score will improve. So rule number 2 is, and this kind of goes with rule number 1, is to automate your monthly payments. You should definitely take advantage of automating your payments, either through online bill pay or even through your credit card company yourself. You could have them either just charge you a certain amount every month. You could have the balance paid off every month, but you want to make sure you're at least making the minimum payment. I actually do this with my credit cards. I have just a small minimum payment sent every month. My goal is to also pay them off every month, but I have that automated payment sent. That way, if something happens, and it's happened before, the holidays come, or you go out of town and you forget to pay your credit card by the due date, and as long as you've paid something through that automatic payment, that's going to help you alleviate you getting late fees. You still might pay some interest if you then paid shortly after, but automating that is going to help. Rule number 3 is to try to get any fees on your cards waived. And I've talked in past episodes about getting the most from credit card rewards, and a lot of these reward cards do have annual fees. And sometimes those annual fees can be worth it, because if you spend a certain amount of money on your credit card, you can get a lot of points or cash back that could be worth much more than the annual fee. But if you've already then satisfied using that card, and you're not going to be eligible for those really accelerated miles or bonuses, you might want to follow up with your credit card company to see if they can eliminate that fee. Sometimes they can't. Maybe they can offer you another card, and if it's with the same company, that could have a benefit. That way you're not closing one account and opening another. But you'd be amazed at what you can get sometimes when you call the credit card companies, because they want your business. And if you're threatening to close your account and leave, sometimes they can help you. Rule number 4 is to try and negotiate a lower APR. As I said before, the APR is the annual percentage rate that you pay on any balances that you carry, your annual interest rate. And most of these rates are anywhere from 13 to 16%, maybe even higher. And the lower you can get this rate, obviously, the better off you're going to be, because even though we're striving to pay our credit cards off every month, maybe something happens and now you're carrying a balance. You certainly want to be paying the least amount of interest on that balance that you can. So it's also a good idea to call up your credit card company and see if there's anything they can do to lower your interest rate. If you've been a customer for a while, you can also say you're going to close your account, you're going to leave, and maybe they'll come back to you and give you a lower interest rate. You should try doing this every so often. I've done this on a lot of my cards, and I've gotten some of my rates down at about 8%. So if you think about it, if you're paying more than 8%, and the difference was either paying off your credit card or investing the money, in an optimal situation, your investments can average about an 8 to 9% return. That's if you're investing in stocks, that's historically what markets have averaged. So if you're paying a higher interest rate than that, it's almost impossible that you're going to be able to invest your money and earn more than that. So that's where you'd really want to focus on paying off your debt. But for these small balances that you have, you'd want to try to get that interest rate down. Sometimes you can open another card. I would just caution you about jumping from card to card, because you're trying to not be opening and closing a lot of cards. And that leads me to rule number 5, and that would be to keep your primary credit cards open for a while and keep them active. Any lender that's looking at your credit report is going to want to see a long credit history. They're going to want to see that you've had credit for a while, you've used it, you've paid it back. And by having your credit cards, the earliest ones that you've had, keeping them open, this is going to go a long way towards showing your lenders how you've been able to use credit. So myself, for example, I have a credit card that I've had open for 22 years. It was the first credit card I got right out of college. It actually is supposedly tied to my alma mater, University of Delaware. I inquired once to find out how much money they get every time I use this card. It's probably a penny or something like that, but that's how I got this card. But I don't use it much, but I keep it open because it has my longest credit history. And every once in a while I'll get a notification that I need to use the card or it's going to be closed, so I'll use it to make sure it's kept open. And you could do the same thing, or maybe you just put like a small recurring charge on this card, like your Netflix subscription. Just make sure that you also pay it, because you don't want to have a lot of credit cards with a lot of different payments on them, and you're missing making those payments. So you probably want to think about having maybe like 2 or 3 cards. If you have a business, maybe 1 for business, maybe 2 for personal. There's different reasons. Like some credit cards, if you travel internationally, they'll waive the foreign transaction fees. I don't know if you've ever traveled internationally, but anytime you do, if you're using your credit card, you're getting hit with a foreign transaction fee, which can really add up. So there's specific cards that you can get that are just for traveling. There's different reasons to have a few cards, but probably don't want to have too many. That leads us to rule number 6, and that would be increasing your limit. You could close these cards, but you probably want to keep them open and just maybe don't use them. Maybe just use 2 or 3 cards. So as far as rule number 6, increasing your limit, I would say that if you're struggling with paying your debt, you probably don't want to do this now. But if you're somebody who generally pays off their credit cards on time, you're not carrying credit card debt, what you can look into doing is increasing your credit limit so that when you do utilize your credit, it will look better on your credit report. And let me explain this. One of the things that is part of your credit score is the amount of your credit that you're utilizing. So let's just say you have $10,000 in credit card debt and you have a $20,000 credit card limit between your cards. You have a 50% utilization rate. So you're using 50% of your credit. If instead you're able to get your credit limit increased, let's say to $30,000, and you carried the same balance, you are now using 33% of your credit. So your credit score would look better because you have a lower utilization rate. And I will even see this on my own credit. One of my cards I have is a Discover card. And with the Discover card, you can log in on the app or online. It shows you what your credit score is, and I will see that when I've charged more things on my credit than I have in the past, like making a large purchase or something like that, my credit score will actually go down because of my utilization rate. So what you can do is increase that credit limit, and that will then help your utilization rate. So that if you are going to apply for a loan, you want to probably have the highest credit score that you can have. So you just call up your credit card companies and tell them that, maybe you're making a larger purchase or you're going to be using your card more. You want to see if they can give you a credit limit increase. And sometimes they'll tell you right over the phone. Sometimes they'll have to get back to you. I think you can also do this online too with some credit cards. So it is a good idea. Now, the danger of this, right, is that you're giving yourself, a bigger rope to hang yourself from, so to speak, right? You're giving yourself a bigger credit limit, but it's not a bad thing to have that available as long as that you use it, responsibly, so to speak. You're not spending more than you take in, and you're not carrying a lot of credit card debt. And it could help you if you are in a tough jam and you need access to a large amount of credit. It could be helpful to have these large cards, because usually when you need a loan the most, when you are in a desperate time, is when you're not going to be able to get it, right? If you're in a situation where you've been having trouble paying your cards and you need to use more because you've got some expenses coming up, and maybe you're have a large cash influx coming in, or you're unemployed and now you're getting back to work, it's going to be hard to get a credit limit increase. But when you're paying things on time and you have a low credit, that's actually the time to ask to increase your limit. And rule number 7 would be to take advantage of the credit card secret benefits. And again, this would be if you're paying your cards responsibly, there are annual benefits that you could get. I mentioned them earlier. One would be the credit card rewards, right? If you're using your credit cards a lot and you're paying them off every month so that you're not paying interest, you're not paying late fees, the benefit to you is that you have credit card rewards that you can get miles or you can get cash back so that you can utilize that. You can get some benefit. But there's other benefits you might not know about, such as if you rent a car. A lot of credit cards have rental insurance, so that if you get in an accident, you'd be covered. And this would cover your collision. So that when you go to like the Enterprise or the Hertz to rent a car and they ask you, do you want to pay extra for the collision? You probably should say no. You want to check with your credit card company. But if it's covered, you don't need it. This actually happened to me. I rented a car and I was actually leaving the rental lot, and the gate that you leave that lets you out malfunctioned, and it hit the front of the car, and there was some damage, but the credit card actually covered it. And I actually made out because the credit card company created an estimate for the amount, but it ended up being less. So I actually made money in that situation. Pretty crazy. But that's one benefit that you could have. Another one is some credit card companies have trip cancellation insurance, so that if you booked a trip or a flight somewhere and now you need to change it and you need to pay change fees, you could potentially have that paid for by your credit card companies. You can check into that. And then some of them also offer a concierge service. So if you were trying to go to like a special event, sporting event, a concert, and you couldn't get tickets, you could possibly reach out to the concierge and see if there's anything they can do for you. So definitely, try to apply some of these rules to your credit cards and, help you to improve, what you're getting from them. So I hope this was helpful. And if you have any listener questions, as always, please go to retirewithryan.com to submit your listener questions. Have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you next Wednesday. Take care.